The story begins on Halloween night. A man named John is walking home alone when he notices a strange figure following him, a masked individual dressed in a bright orange suit, known only as the Jester. As John rushes through the streets, he spots a young girl standing silently in a dark alley. Assuming it's just his imagination, he ignores her and keeps moving. However, moments later, the same girl suddenly appears directly in his path. Terrified, John squeezes his eyes shut, and when he opens them again, the girl is gone. Shaken by the experience, John notices a Polaroid photograph lying nearby. The picture reveals that the girl he's been seeing is actually his daughter. Lost in thought, he stares at the photo before finally deciding to make a phone call. To his surprise, his now grown daughter, Emma, answers. John takes the opportunity to apologize for the mistakes of his past and tries to reconnect with her. Unaware that the Jester is silently standing behind him, watching his every move, John pours out his regrets. But Emma isn't ready to forgive him. Still carrying years of pain and resentment, she responds coldly, insults him, and abruptly hangs up the phone. As tears begin to fill John's eyes, a hand suddenly lands on his shoulder. He slowly turns around and comes face to face with the terrifying figure that has been stalking him, the Jester. The Jester begins to toy with John, silently mocking him before suddenly covering his mouth to prevent him from screaming. Without warning, a rope materializes out of thin air. The entity wraps it around John's neck and starts tightening it with supernatural force. At the same time, the Jester pulls on his own necktie as if controlling the rope like a puppet string. John is lifted helplessly into the air, struggling to breathe. Within moments, the rope takes his life. Once he's gone, the Jester levitates his body over the bridge and casually drops it from above before disappearing into the night. The following day, John's funeral is held. Despite their troubled past, Emma decides to attend. She keeps her distance from the other mourners and avoids unnecessary conversations. Meanwhile, Jocelyn, John's daughter from another relationship, is visibly devastated by his death. She spends her time greeting guests and thanking everyone who came to pay their respects.
When Jocelyn's friends arrive, they are surprised to see Emma there. They exchange a few words with Jocelyn and wonder why her half-sister has suddenly decided to show up. After the service, Emma calls her mother and lets her know that the funeral is over. She also mentions that she has spoken with Jocelyn and that the two of them have agreed to meet later that evening. While talking on the phone, Emma notices something disturbing. Standing beside John's coffin is the Jester, bizarrely dancing and celebrating as if the funeral were a party. Startled, she looks away for a second, but when she turns back, the figure has vanished without a trace. Hidden among the trees, the Jester silently watches Emma leave the cemetery. A short while later, two cemetery workers notice the strange masked figure lingering near the gravesite and order him to leave. Instead of obeying, the Jester casually sits down in a chair and places his feet on top of John's coffin. Annoyed by the disrespectful behavior, one of the workers pulls out his phone and decides to call the police. As the worker makes the call, his colleague suddenly collapses to the ground without warning, striking his head against a nearby rock. Alarmed, he urgently asks emergency services to send an ambulance. Rushing to check on his friend, he quickly discovers the cause of the fall. His shoelaces have somehow been tied together. Confused by the bizarre situation, he tries to explain what happened. The dispatcher asks for their exact location so help can be sent. However, before he can respond, something even more horrifying occurs. The worker suddenly begins choking. Blood pours from his mouth as he desperately gasps for air. Then, to his shock, an apple emerges from his throat. Within moments, he collapses and dies, leaving no explanation for the impossible event. Later that evening, Emma meets up with Jocelyn as planned. The two sit together and attempt to have a normal conversation despite the tension between them. Wanting to break the ice, Jocelyn offers Emma a drink and thanks her for attending the funeral. She brings up different topics and does her best to keep the atmosphere friendly and comfortable. After several drinks, Jocelyn finally gathers the courage to show Emma something important. She hands over an envelope containing a photograph that was found in John's pocket when he supposedly took his own life. The moment Emma sees the Polaroid, her expression changes completely. The image clearly unsettles her, bringing back emotions she has tried to bury for years. Instead of explaining herself, she reacts with anger and becomes unexpectedly hostile toward her stepsister, leaving Jocelyn confused by the sudden outburst. Realizing that Emma has no interest in building a relationship with her, Jocelyn decides to ask the question that has been bothering her all day. Why did she come to the funeral?
Emma takes a deep breath and finally opens up about her past. She explains that years ago, John walked out on her and her mother, abandoning them without looking back. Since that day, she has carried a deep resentment toward him. The bitterness only grew stronger when she learned that he had started a new family, married another woman, and raised a second daughter. Emma admits that the only reason she attended the funeral was to find some kind of closure. She wanted to see for herself that John was truly Dawn and hoped it would finally ease the anger she had carried for so long. But after standing beside his coffin, she realized nothing had changed. The pain and resentment were still there, just as strong as ever. The conversation quickly turns into an argument. Frustrated and emotional, Emma storms out of the bar, while Jocelyn quietly takes back the photograph, feeling hurt and disappointed by how the evening ended. As Emma walks home alone through the dark streets, she suddenly encounters the Jester. The strange figure begins performing silent magic tricks as if trying to entertain her. Emma refuses to acknowledge him and keeps walking, hoping he'll disappear. Instead, the entity instantly teleports in front of her and holds out a deck of cards, inviting her to pick one. Terrified, Emma rushes into a nearby convenience store for safety. From inside, she cautiously watches the masked figure standing outside. After lingering for a while, the Jester eventually wanders off and disappears down the street. A short distance away, the entity comes across two boys collecting Halloween candy. The older child greedily grabs handfuls of treats from every house they visit, while the younger boy politely takes only a single piece each time. Amused by the younger child's manners, the Jester performs a simple magic trick and rewards him with an extra piece of candy. The older boy immediately approaches and mocks the performance, claiming the trick wasn't impressive at all. As punishment for his rude behavior, the Jester magically removes the older boy's candy and transfers it into the younger boy's bag. Furious, the older child tries to take the sweets back. However, when he reaches into the bag, the Jester somehow traps his arm inside. Panic instantly takes over. The boy yanks himself free and runs away in terror, with his younger companion following close behind. In their rush to escape, both children leave their candy bags behind, unaware that the Jester is still watching them with a silent smile. After finishing handing out candy to the neighborhood children, Jocelyn settles onto the couch and puts on a few classic horror movies to pass the evening. As she relaxes, she suddenly notices a dark silhouette standing outside the window. Moments later, a series of knocks echoes from the front door. Startled, Jocelyn freezes and keeps her eyes locked on the mysterious figure. Before panic can take over, one of her friends calls her name from another room, snapping her back to reality and easing her nerves. Inside the house, the group begins discussing the town's Halloween festival. One of her friends suggests Jocelyn join them, but she quickly declines. The festival was something she always attended with John, and the memories are still too painful. She insists that going wouldn't be a good idea. Meanwhile, Emma leaves the convenience store with a drink and starts walking toward her hotel. Before she can get far, the Jester suddenly appears in front of her once again. Exhausted from constantly running away, Emma decides to confront the strange figure. Without speaking a word, the Jester presents the same deck of cards and encourages her to participate in a trick.
Although suspicious, Emma picks a card, memorizes it, and places it back into the deck. The masked magician shuffles the cards and offers her the top card, expecting a reaction. Instead, Emma is completely unimpressed and simply walks away. A few minutes later, she realizes the Jester is still following her. Frustrated, she spins around and shoves him, accidentally knocking a glass bottle onto the ground. The Jester calmly bends down and picks up a sharp shard from the broken bottle. Assuming he intends to attack her, Emma nervously asks if he plans to kill her. What happens next is far worse than she expected. Rather than harming her, the Jester drags the glass across his own throat. A small spray of blood splashes onto Emma's face. As she stands there in shock, trying to process what she just witnessed, the entity slowly rises to its feet. Its body moves in an unnatural, stiff manner, making the scene even more disturbing. Terrified, Emma turns and sprints into a nearby alleyway. Behind her, the Jester follows at a slow, deliberate pace, never appearing to hurry, yet somehow never falling behind. Back at home, Jocelyn and her friends begin discussing what happens after death. Liam casually remarks that there is nothing beyond the grave and that the cemetery is simply the final stop for everyone. His words deeply upset Jocelyn. Seeking comfort, she quietly walks into John's old room and sits down among his belongings. As she studies old family photographs, memories of happier times begin flooding back. Then, out of nowhere, she notices a figure sitting in the armchair behind her. It looks exactly like John.
down, the sight sends a wave of fear through her body. Convinced that stress and grief are causing her to hallucinate, she quickly leaves the room and returns to her friends. Determined to stop dwelling on frightening thoughts, Jocelyn suddenly changes her mind about the Halloween festival. She tells the group she wants to go after all, hoping the celebration will help distract her from everything that has happened. At the Halloween festival, Jocelyn follows her friends through the crowded attractions. However, everywhere she looks, she is reminded of her father. Random strangers seem to be wearing clothes similar to John's, and some even appear with ropes hanging around their necks. Whether these are real people or simply manifestations of her grief, the unsettling images make it impossible for her to relax. Soon, the group reaches the haunted forest attraction. Excited by the challenge, her friends eagerly head inside, and Jocelyn reluctantly follows them.
As they move deeper into the maze, the group becomes separated. Alone, Jocelyn finds herself wandering through a section filled entirely with hanging ropes. The disturbing sight immediately reminds her of John's death, causing her anxiety to intensify. Despite her fear, she pushes forward and eventually reaches another area decorated with dozens of eerie jack-o'-lanterns. Following the path ahead, she comes across a massive clown head that serves as an entrance to the next section of the attraction. Gathering her courage, Jocelyn steps through the clown's open mouth. Inside, she is confronted with a horrifying vision. Suspended in front of her are what appear to be her father's legs dangling from above. The shocking sight sends her into a state of panic. Before she can recover, one of her friends suddenly appears behind her, unintentionally scaring her even more. Completely overwhelmed, Jocelyn rushes out of the attraction and breaks down in tears. Through her sobs, she admits how much she misses both of her parents. She regrets believing that she could rebuild some form of family connection through Emma. Deep down, she had hoped that the two of them could become sisters despite their complicated past. Now, after their argument, she feels more alone than ever. Meanwhile, Emma arrives at a convenience store, still shaken and covered with traces of blood from her encounter with the Jester. Desperate for help, she tries to explain what happened to the store clerk. Unfortunately, the employee assumes she has been drinking and dismisses her story as nonsense. When Emma refuses to leave, the clerk contacts the police. A short time later, officers arrive at the scene. Emma once again explains that she witnessed a masked man survive a seemingly fatal injury and continue following her. Unsurprisingly, the officers find her story impossible to believe. As the discussion continues, the Jester quietly enters the store. The mysterious figure casually wanders through the aisles before stopping directly behind one of the policemen. Noticing the bizarre costume, the officers ask whether he knows Emma and order him to remove the mask. The Jester offers no response. Instead, he completely ignores their questions. Then, in an instant, he somehow appears behind Emma without anyone noticing how he moved. The sight leaves Emma frozen with fear, realizing that the nightmare she has been trying to escape is still right beside her. Without saying a word, the Jester pulls a handcuff from his pocket and snaps one end around his own wrist. A moment later, the other end somehow appears locked around the wrists of the two police officers.
The officers stare at the handcuffs in confusion, trying to understand how the trick was performed. Before they can react, the Jester removes his oversized top hat and forces one officer's head inside it. When he pulls the hat away, the man's head is gone, leaving only his neck behind. Horrified, the second officer quickly frees himself from the handcuffs and opens fire. The bullet races toward the Jester, but the entity casually catches it as if it were nothing more than a tossed coin. While the monster is distracted, Emma takes the opportunity to escape. She rushes out of the store and sprints through the empty streets. Unfortunately, it doesn't take long for the Jester to finish dealing with the remaining officer before continuing the chase. Meanwhile, at the Halloween festival, Jocelyn sits with her friends when she suddenly spots what appears to be John's ghost moving through the crowd. Instead of ignoring it, she decides to follow. Leaving her friends behind, she chases the apparition deeper into the attraction. Back at the table, Liam unexpectedly encounters the Jester. The entity sets up another twisted game. Placing several cups on a table, he hides an object beneath one of them and challenges Liam to guess its location. After the cups are shuffled around, Liam confidently points to the middle one. The Jester lifts it and reveals that the hidden item has somehow changed color. Amused by the trick, Liam is briefly impressed. Then, the game takes a horrifying turn. The Jester lifts a second cup, revealing a pile of human teeth underneath. Instantly, every tooth in Liam's mouth vanishes. Blood pours from his gums as he screams in agony. Completely terrified now, Liam can only watch as the Jester raises the final cup. At first, the object beneath it seems harmless. Relieved, Liam believes the nightmare is over. However, the Jester points out that something is still stuck inside the cup. He slams the cup onto the table, and Liam's eyes suddenly fall out onto the surface. As Liam's screams echo through the attraction, his friends rush to help him and desperately call for Jocelyn to come back. Before they can escape, the Jester appears in front of them. With a simple gesture, he shatters one girl's leg. Another suddenly loses the ability to speak entirely, her voice stolen without explanation. As chaos erupts around them, the entity slowly advances toward Jocelyn. Elsewhere, Emma continues running through the city until exhaustion finally forces her to stop outside a library. Breathing heavily, she leans against a wall and tries to collect herself. At that moment, her phone rings. It's her mother. Instead of comforting her, her mother laughs at her fears and mocks her for being terrified of what sounds nothing more than a costumed performer. She argues that Emma's problems are her own fault, claiming that people keep drifting away because of her cold and distant attitude. The criticism hits Emma hard. Then, something even stranger happens. Across the street, the Jester appears outside the library and stares directly at her. When he finally speaks, the voice coming from beneath the mask is not his own. It's her mother's voice. The realization sends a chill down Emma's spine. After spending the entire night trying to escape, she finally reaches her limit. Running no longer seems like an option, and for the first time, she may have to confront the nightmare head-on.
Gathering her courage, Emma finally confronts the Jester and demands to know what he wants from her. Rather than answering directly, the entity begins speaking about Jocelyn. He points out that Jocelyn spent years trying to build a connection between them, hoping they could become a real family despite their complicated history. According to the Jester, those efforts have now come to an end. Confused and alarmed, Emma immediately asks what he has done to her sister. The Jester coldly replies that it shouldn't matter. He reminds Emma that she never truly cared about Jocelyn before, so why should she start now? Ignoring the taunt, Emma asks again where Jocelyn is. The entity then presents her with a choice. He tells her she can simply walk away and never look back, just as John once did. If she chooses that path, Jocelyn will eventually fade into memory, and Emma can continue living her life without the burden of family ties or painful emotions. But there is another option. The Jester explains that if she wants to keep playing his game, she must commit to it completely and accept whatever lies ahead. Without hesitation, Emma declares that she will not leave without Jocelyn. For the first time, the Jester seems pleased. He congratulates her decision and remarks that she has finally learned something important. As the entity's eerie laughter echoes around her, Emma suddenly notices the spirit of John standing on the same bridge where he lost his life. Believing this may be her chance to make things right, she rushes toward him. Desperate and emotional, Emma begs him to stop and asks for a chance to talk. John's spirit responds bitterly. He reminds her that he already tried to speak with her on the night of his death, but she rejected him and hung up before he could explain himself. Still wearing the rope around his neck, the ghost blames Emma for everything that happened. He insists that things could have turned out differently if she had listened to him that night. The accusations hit Emma hard. Filled with regret, she apologizes and asks for forgiveness. For the first time in years, she calls him Dad, hoping to reach the father she once knew. But the spirit refuses to let go of his anger. Instead, he continues blaming her before lifting the noose from around his own neck and placing it over hers. Suddenly, the rope comes alive. It tightens and drags Emma toward the edge of the bridge. Unable to resist, she is pulled into the darkness below. When she opens her eyes again, she finds herself alone in the middle of a cemetery. Confused and disoriented, Emma begins calling out for Jocelyn.
As she searches through the foggy graveyard, she encounters a young girl wandering alone among the trees. The child appears to be a younger version of Jocelyn. Not recognizing Emma, the girl innocently asks if she has seen her father. She explains that she was left alone in the forest and doesn't know how to find her way back. The encounter feels far too real to be a simple hallucination. Realizing that she is getting closer to the truth behind the Jester's game, Emma continues deeper into the darkness, determined to find her sister no matter what waits ahead. The young version of Jocelyn insists that she is John's true daughter and claims that Emma is nothing more than a mistake that never should have existed. Despite the cruel remarks, Emma refuses to let the words affect her and continues searching for the real Jocelyn. A short distance later, she spots John and the younger Jocelyn entering a strange building. Hoping to find answers, Emma follows them inside. To her surprise, the two appear to be happily carving pumpkins together, as if they were a perfect family preparing for Halloween. The peaceful scene quickly turns dark when John notices Emma standing nearby. With a cold expression, he tells her that he never wanted her and that her birth was a mistake. Holding a carving knife in his hand, he slowly approaches while continuing to blame her for every disappointment in his life. According to him, even after starting a new family, the simple fact that Emma existed was enough to prevent him from ever being truly happy. Then, in a horrifying act, John raises the knife and drives it into his own chest. As Emma breaks down in tears, John questions why she is crying. He bitterly claims that his death should have made her happy and repeatedly asks whether she feels responsible for what happened. He insists that guilt will follow her for the rest of her life. Desperate, Emma turns to Jocelyn for help. Instead of comforting her, the younger girl joins in the torment. She mocks Emma's behavior at the funeral and says she feels sorry for how pathetic she looked. Pulling the knife from John's chest, she tells Emma that she had a chance to repair their family but wasted it. The accusations become increasingly cruel. Jocelyn calls Emma a burden and claims that everyone around her would be better off without her. Finally, she places the knife in Emma's hands and tells her that ending her own life would be the last good thing she could do for the world. Overwhelmed by emotion, Emma begins crying. But then she realizes something important. None of this is real. The people in front of her are merely illusions designed to exploit her guilt and self-hatred. Determined to break free from the manipulation, Emma thrusts the knife forward. The illusion instantly shatters. To her horror, she discovers that she hasn't stabbed a vision at all. She has stabbed the real Jocelyn.
The wounded girl collapses to the ground, struggling to stay conscious as blood begins to spread across her clothes. Panicking, Emma rushes to help her sister. At that moment, the Jester appears. Consumed by anger and grief, Emma turns on the entity and repeatedly drives the knife into its chest. She calls the Jester a monster and blames him for everything that has happened. After exhausting herself, Emma finally lowers the weapon and declares that she is done running. She tells the Jester that he can do whatever he wants to her as long as he leaves Jocelyn alone. Surprisingly, the entity doesn't retaliate. Instead, the Jester simply turns around and walks away, disappearing into the darkness and leaving the sisters behind. Sometime later, after Jocelyn receives help, Emma finds herself standing in the cemetery. While speaking with her mother on the phone, she mentions that she plans to spend a few days with her after returning from her trip. Once the call ends, Emma walks over to John's grave. Standing before the headstone, she finally says everything she never had the chance to say. She apologizes for rejecting him on the night he called and admits that she wishes they could have spoken one last time. However, she also comes to an important realization. While she regrets many things, she is not responsible for John's death. His choices were ultimately his own. Emma acknowledges that their relationship was deeply flawed and that they never managed to understand each other. Even so, she accepts that they were family and shared the same blood. She knows the pain of the past will never completely disappear, but she refuses to let it control her future. Instead, she promises to learn from her mistakes, repair her relationship with Jocelyn, and move forward with her life. And with that, the story of the Jester comes to an end.